Diana Ross was more than Michael Jackson's mentor. She became a mirror for his hopes and heartbreak. From the outside, their relationship looked like one of the most glamorous friendships in music history. Motown royalty guiding a child prodigy who would go on to become the king of pop. But behind the cameras, the story was far more complicated, filled with mentorship, mystery, and myths that blurred the lines between fact and legend. We're not just talking about celebrity gossip here. This is a story about mentorship and identity, about how fame twists relationships into something the public feels entitled to define, and about what Diana Ross herself has revealed about her journey with Michael Jackson. So the real questions are these. How did Diana Ross first step into Michael Jackson's life? And what role did she play in shaping his identity? What tensions, rumors, and contradictions have surrounded their bond, and how have they been portrayed over time? And what revelations has Diana Ross made lately? And what lessons does she believe come from their journey? Because if you want to understand the truth about Diana Ross and Michael Jackson, you have to separate the myth from the music. Before Diana Ross and Michael Jackson were linked by legend, they were already icons in the making. Diana's story begins in Detroit, where she rose from a teenager in a housing project to the face of Motown's most successful act, the Supremes. By the mid-1960s, she was more than a singer. She was a blueprint. Elegance, ambition, and star power rolled into one. When she stepped out as a solo artist in 1970, she didn't just reinvent herself. She defined what it meant to be a crossover star. Glamorous enough for Hollywood, soulful enough for Motown. Meanwhile, a young Michael Jackson was just starting out with his brothers in Gary, Indiana. By the time Motown signed the Jackson 5 in 1969, Michael was a prodigy. Only 11 years old, but already dazzling with a voice that felt far older than his years. When Motown needed a face to introduce their new act, they turned to Diana Ross. She was the label's most bankable star, and her endorsement gave the Jackson brothers instant credibility. But here's where myth and marketing collide. For decades, the story circulated that Diana Ross herself discovered the Jackson 5, even headlining their debut album with the line, "Diana Ross presents the Jackson 5." It painted a picture of Ross plucking the group from obscurity. In truth, the group had already impressed Motown executives and signed their deal before Ross's involvement. A recent report from LOS 40 confirms it. The story was largely a publicity strategy dreamed up by Motown's Berry Gordy. It gave the Jacksons a glamorous introduction and added to Diana's image as a tastemaker. Still, perception mattered more than fact. To the world, Ross was the godmother who ushered Michael Jackson into stardom. And for Michael, a boy thrust suddenly into global fame, Diana became more than a sponsor. She was a symbol of success, a star who embodied everything he dreamed of becoming. But what began as a calculated marketing move soon evolved into something deeper. A bond that blurred the line between mentorship, admiration, and myth. If the myth of Diana Ross discovering the Jackson 5 created the stage, what followed was a relationship that blurred every boundary between professional, personal, and public theater. The most visible symbol of that connection came in 1978 with The Wiz, Motown's reimagining of The Wizard of Oz. Diana starred as Dorothy, and Michael, still only 19, played the Scarecrow. Together they recorded Ease On Down the Road, a playful duet that turned into an anthem of shared optimism. For fans, it wasn't just a soundtrack cut. It was proof that their bond was real, that Diana was walking Michael into the next phase of his career. But behind the music, their connection was far more complicated. Michael himself often spoke of Diana in ways that startled interviewers. In one candid remark, he described her as part mother, part sister, part lover, an admission that captured just how tangled his feelings were. For Michael, who often spoke about his loneliness despite fame, Diana seemed to be every role he craved in one person. On television, their chemistry played out in full view. During Diana's 1981 TV special, she invited Michael to the stage. They sang, they embraced, and at one point, Diana even called him sexy to the audience's delight. These moments only fueled speculation. Were they friends? Confidants? or something more. The tabloids leaned into the ambiguity and fans couldn't get enough. Yet their closeness wasn't without strain. Michael reportedly skipped Diana's 1985 wedding to Arna Ness Jr., a pointed absence that raised eyebrows. Years later, his will revealed another twist. If his mother Catherine could not care for his children, guardianship would go to Diana Ross. It was an extraordinary show of trust, and once again blurred the lines between family, friendship, and something deeper. For Diana herself, the framing has always been steadier. In interviews, she resists the romantic interpretations. To her, Michael was a younger artist she guided, protected, and at times shielded. She has described their relationship as one of support and mentorship, where affection was real, but the labels others tried to impose simply didn't fit. And yet, for all Diana's clarity, the world never stopped speculating. Because when two legends orbit each other so closely, the lines between truth and fantasy become almost impossible to separate. Fans picked up on every breadcrumb. Songs were dissected as if they held secret confessions. When Michael released Dirty Diana in 1988, some insisted it was about Ross. Never mind that Michael himself clarified it was about the dangers of groupies. The rumors stuck, because the name Diana was simply too convenient. But legends aren't only defined by songs or headlines. They're defined by the worlds they build around them. And in Diana Ross's case, her homes tell the story just as clearly as her music ever did. She has always lived in spaces that match her voice. Grand, commanding, and unforgettable. And her real estate trail tells its own story of status and evolution. Most recently in 2022, she bought a $15.5 million waterfront mansion on Miami's San Marco Island. The property is as striking as any stage Ross has ever walked on. 5 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, walls of glass that look out over Biscayne Bay, a sleek infinity pool, and even a rooftop terrace where the skyline becomes part of the view. It's modern, open, and drenched in light, a deliberate contrast to the heavy traditional luxury of her earlier homes. Before Miami, Ross spent decades rooted in the East Coast. Her Quarry Farm estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, became almost as famous as she was. With 11 bedrooms, 10 bathrooms, manicured lawns, and sprawling grounds, the estate was a place where privacy met prestige. Greenwich, after all, isn't just suburban Connecticut. It's where Wall Street powerhouses and cultural elites hide from the city's spotlight. For Ross, it was a sanctuary and a stage, all at once. She also kept addresses in Beverly Hills and New York City, each one aligning with different chapters of her career. The Beverly Hills property connected her to the Hollywood elite, while New York rooted her in the fashion and theater circuits. Taken together, her portfolio reveals a pattern. Ross doesn't just buy homes, she buys statements. And in each one, the same truth echoes. Her homes weren't just backdrops, they were arenas of myth-making, the kind of spaces where fans and media alike imagined connections, including the ones to Michael Jackson. But while her homes anchored her presence, her cars and vehicles told another story. One about movement, taste, and how a superstar chooses to travel through the world. For Diana Ross, luxury wasn't just in her homes. It was in the way she moved. She has owned cars that stand as icons of elegance. One of the most famous is her Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow Drophead Coupe, the kind of convertible you don't just drive, but arrive in. It was pure diva energy, a vehicle that announced Ross before she even stepped out. Even more prized among collectors is her former 1967 Jaguar E-Type Series I 4.2 Roadster. Sleek, British, and instantly recognizable. The E-Type has often been called one of the most beautiful cars ever made. Ross's ownership added another layer of velour. A glamorous car paired with a glamorous star. Other models have been linked to her over the years, like a Chrysler 300 which carried that mix of style and substance that fit her image. Whether behind the wheel or stepping out of the passenger seat, her cars reinforced her brand, sophisticated, timeless, and unmistakably elite. And of course, as a global superstar, Ross's mobility extended far beyond the road. Private jets were a staple of her touring life, necessary tools for an artist who could be expected in Tokyo on a Tuesday and Paris by the weekend. Air travel wasn't an indulgence. It was survival in the era of relentless tours and world stages. Diana Ross's journey with Michael Jackson, her properties, her cars, her very presence, All of it points to one truth. Her life has always been a stage, and she has never stopped performing. She has revealed lessons about mentorship, fame, and resilience. She has built homes that double as fortresses and symbols. She has moved through the world in cars and jets that underline her status. And through it all, she's held control of her own story, deciding what to confirm, what to deny, and what to leave to the imagination. In the end, Diana Ross doesn't just live a life, she curates a legend. And legends, by their very nature, never truly go quiet.